The crimson sunset painted the western sky as Cassandra Morgan clutched her worn leather satchel tighter against her chest, eyes darting nervously across the dusty main street of Promise Creek. The frontier town bustled with activity despite the late hour, men spilling from saloon doors with raucous laughter, while others conducted last-minute business before nightfall. Every male gaze that flickered her way sent a chill down her spine, each one seeming to undress her with their eyes, seeing only what they could take from her. It had been this way since she was 16. Now, at 22, Cassandra had built walls high enough to keep even the most persistent suitors at bay. Experience had taught her the painful lesson that a woman alone in the West was seen as either property to be claimed or pleasure to be used. "Miss, you look like you could use some assistance." The deep voice startled her, and she whirled around, nearly colliding with a broad chest. Stumbling backward, she found herself looking up at a tall man with sun-weathered skin and eyes the color of a summer storm. Unlike the others, his gaze remained respectfully on her face. "I don't need anything from any man," she replied sharply, her fingers instinctively tightening around the small derringer hidden in her skirt pocket. The stranger touched the brim of his hat. "Fair enough. Just thought you might need directions. Town can be confusing to newcomers." He made no move to step closer, maintaining a respectful distance that surprised her. Cassandra hesitated. Her planned accommodation had fallen through. The boarding house matron had taken one look at her travel-worn appearance and declared she didn't take in women of questionable virtue. Now night was falling, and she had nowhere to go. "I'm looking for respectable lodgings," she admitted reluctantly. The man nodded thoughtfully. "Mrs. Wilson's place is full up, I take it?" When she nodded stiffly, he continued, "My aunt runs a small boarding house on Willow Street. Much quieter, and she's particular about her guests, but in a fair way." "And what would she require in return for this generosity?" Cassandra asked, suspicion evident in her voice. Something flickered across his face, not offense, but something like sadness. "Just the standard rate. $2 a week, meals included." He pulled a folded paper from his vest pocket. "Here's her address. Tell her Nathan Blackwood sent you." He offered the paper, then seemed to reconsider and placed it on a nearby barrel instead, stepping back so she could retrieve it without coming near him. "That's all?" Cassandra asked, suspicious. "You're not expecting compensation?" Nathan shook his head, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Miss, all I'm offering is my name and directions. Nothing more." With that, he touched his hat again and turned, walking away before she could respond. Cassandra watched him go, confusion replacing her usual wariness. Men didn't simply help without expectation. They always wanted something: her body, her servitude, her dignity. Yet something about the way he'd kept his distance, the way his eyes had remained kind without being intrusive, made her pick up the paper. The address was only 3 blocks away. With her options dwindling along with the daylight, Cassandra decided to take the risk. At least she still had her derringer if things went south. Mrs. Eleanor Blackwood turned out to be a stern-faced widow in her 60s with sharp eyes that seemed to miss nothing. She inspected Cassandra thoroughly before nodding once. "My nephew has good judgment about people," she said after Cassandra explained who had sent her. "First week's payment in advance. Room small but clean. No gentlemen callers, no drinking, no returning after 9 without prior arrangement." Understood. The rules were strict but fair. Cassandra counted out her precious coins, aware that her savings were dwindling dangerously. She needed to find work quickly. Her room was indeed small but immaculately kept, with fresh linens and a small vase of wildflowers on the bedside table. After weeks of travel, sleeping in stagecoaches and questionable inns, it felt like paradise. As she unpacked her meager belongings, she wondered about the cowboy Nathan Blackwood, who had helped her without asking for anything in return. Morning came with the smell of coffee and bacon wafting up from downstairs. Cassandra dressed carefully in her best dress, faded but clean, and pinned her chestnut hair into a simple bun. Today she would find work. 5 hours later, her spirits had plummeted. The general store didn't need help. The dressmaker already had an apprentice, and the schoolteacher position had been filled last month. The saloon had offered her work immediately, but the owner's roving eyes told her exactly what kind of work would be expected. Exhausted and disheartened, she sat on a bench outside the town's small library, watching people go about their day. Promise Creek had seemed like such a good prospect from the advertisements, a growing town with opportunities for those willing to work hard. But it seemed those opportunities were primarily for men. Miss Morgan. She looked up to find Nathan Blackwood standing a respectful distance away, hat in hand. The afternoon sun caught in his dark hair, revealing strands of auburn among the brown. Mr. Blackwood, she acknowledged, straightening her posture. Aunt Eleanor mentioned you were looking for work. He shifted slightly, seeming almost nervous. I don't mean to presume, but Doc Harris is looking for someone to help manage his office. Patients, appointments, keeping his books in order. He's getting on in years and can't keep up with everything alone. Cassandra studied him suspiciously. And why would you help me with this information? Nathan's weathered face creased in a small smile. Promise Creek needs good people who are willing to work hard. That's all. He pointed down the street. White building with green trim. If you're interested, tell him I sent you. Before she could ask anything else, he replaced his hat, nodded politely, and continued on his way. Dr. Harris turned out to be a gentle-mannered man in his 70s with shaking hands but sharp eyes. He asked practical questions about her education and experience, seeming pleased when she demonstrated her neat handwriting and quick arithmetic. Can you start tomorrow? He asked finally. Pays $8 a week. Hours can be long when there's emergencies, but generally 8 to 5, with half-days on Saturdays. It was more than she dared hope for. Yes, sir. I'd be glad to. As she walked back to the boarding house, her step lighter than it had been in months, Cassandra found herself wondering again about Nathan Blackwood. Twice now he'd helped her without asking for anything in return. She'd never encountered a man like that before. Her father had been the first to betray her trust, drinking away their family's money before gambling away their farm. Her mother had died of grief and exhaustion soon after. The uncle who took her in had made his expectations clear on her 16th birthday, his hands wandering where they shouldn't. She'd fled that night. Then came the series of men who offered help only to demand payment in her flesh. The shopkeeper who offered her work, then tried to corner her in the storeroom. The stagecoach driver who'd accidentally entered her room at night. The banker who'd offered a loan with special terms. Each encounter had built her walls higher, reinforced her belief that men only saw her as something to use. And yet, Nathan Blackwood had twice offered assistance without expectation. She didn't trust it. Couldn't trust it. Men always wanted something eventually. The next morning, Cassandra arrived at Dr. Harris's office 15 minutes early, determined to make a good impression. The doctor showed her his chaotic filing system, his appointment book, and the supply cupboard that needed organizing. By noon, she had already made significant improvements to his record-keeping. You're a godsend, Miss Morgan, Dr. Harris said, watching her work. Been meaning to get this place in order for years. I'm happy to help, Doctor, she replied, pleased with his approval. The bell above the door jingled, and Cassandra turned to greet their next patient. Her words died in her throat when she saw Nathan Blackwood standing there, blood seeping through a makeshift bandage around his forearm. Sorry to trouble you, Doc, he said, seeming embarrassed. Barbed wire had other ideas about how my morning should go. Dr. Harris clucked his tongue. Sit down, boy. Miss Morgan, would you bring the suture kit and some carbolic acid? Cassandra gathered the supplies, watching surreptitiously as Nathan removed his shirt to give the doctor better access to the wound. His torso was lean and muscled from hard work, scattered with old scars that spoke of a life lived rough. Unlike other men who might have used the opportunity to posture or flex, Nathan simply sat quietly, his eyes fixed on the middle distance. Miss Morgan will clean the wound while I prepare the sutures, Dr. Harris instructed. Her hands trembled slightly as she approached. Nathan gave her a reassuring smile. Don't worry, Miss Morgan. I've had worse. The wound was deep, a jagged tear that must have been extremely painful, yet he hadn't flinched when she began cleaning it. His skin was warm beneath her fingers, and she found herself noticing the steady rhythm of his breathing, the faint scent of soap and leather that clung to him. Thank you for recommending me to Dr. Harris, she said quietly, focusing on her task. You seemed capable. Doctor needed help. His reply was simple, matter of fact. How are you finding Promise Creek so far? The casual conversation felt strange, a man speaking to her, as if she were simply a person, not a target or a prize. It seems. Promising, she answered cautiously. Nathan smiled at her wordplay, then winced as the doctor began stitching his wound. Town's growing fast. Good people here mostly. Mostly. Well, every place has its share of troublemakers. Steer clear of the Red Ace Saloon after dark. Jackson, the owner, isn't known for his gentlemanly behavior. She nodded, having already encountered Jackson's leering gaze during her job search. I'll keep that in mind. When the treatment was finished, Nathan insisted on paying despite Dr. Harris's protests about family rates. He put his shirt back on, thanked them both politely, and left with another tip of his hat to Cassandra. Fine young man, Dr. Harris commented after he'd gone. One of the hardest workers in the county. Runs that ranch of his almost single-handed since his pa passed. He has a ranch? Cassandra asked, curious despite herself. Twin Pines, about 5 miles east. Not the biggest spread, but he's building it up nicely. Stubborn as they come, though. Plenty of young ladies have set their caps for him, but he keeps to himself mostly. The doctor chuckled. His aunt's beside herself, wanting to see him settled before she's too old to enjoy great nieces and nephews. Cassandra absorbed this information, filing it away. Not that she was interested, she'd sworn off men entirely, but it helped to know the backgrounds of people in her new community. The next few weeks fell into a pleasant routine. Cassandra worked diligently at the doctor's office, gradually bringing order to the chaos of his practice. She took her meals at the boarding house, where Mrs. Blackwood proved to be an excellent cook if somewhat intimidating in conversation. On Sundays, she attended the small Methodist church at the edge of town, more to make connections in the community than from any strong religious conviction. She saw Nathan occasionally bringing supplies to town, helping an elderly neighbor repair her porch, discussing cattle prices with other ranchers outside the general store. He always acknowledged her with a polite nod or tip of his hat, but never imposed himself on her time or attention. It was unsettling. Men pursued. That was what they did. They made their interests known, pressed their advantages, leveraged their help into obligation. Nathan's respectful distance defied everything she thought she knew about male behavior. One afternoon, as summer heat baked the dusty streets, Dr. Harris closed the office early. Too hot for anyone but emergencies, he declared. Go enjoy the afternoon, Miss Morgan. With unexpected free time, Cassandra decided to visit the small lending library. As she browsed the limited selection, the door opened, bringing with it a blast of hot air and Nathan Blackwood. He nodded in greeting. Miss Morgan. Mr. Blackwood. They stood in awkward silence for a moment before both speaking at once. How is your arm? Finding anything interesting? They stopped, and Nathan gestured for her to continue. I was just asking about your arm, she said. He flexed his forearm, showing the healing scar. Good as new. Thanks to you and the doc. I didn't do much. You have a gentle touch. Makes a difference when you're in pain. His eyes met hers briefly before returning to the bookshelves. Are you finding everything you need in Promise Creek? The question seemed loaded with meaning beyond its simple words. Cassandra considered how to answer. It's different from what I expected, she admitted, but not in a bad way. Nathan selected a book. She caught a glimpse of the title, something about advanced cattle breeding techniques. Town grows on you, like moss on a north-facing tree. His mouth quirked in a half-smile. Not the most poetic comparison, I suppose. The small joke surprised a laugh out of her. Not quite the stuff of sonnets, no. His eyes warmed at her laughter, and for a moment, Cassandra felt something shift between them, a brief connection, quickly gone as Nathan cleared his throat and stepped back. Well, I should let you get back to your browsing, he said. Good afternoon, Miss Morgan. Good afternoon, Mr. Blackwood. She watched him leave, confused by the strange disappointment she felt at his departure. It made no sense. She should be relieved that he continued to keep his distance, continued to ask nothing of her. So why did part of her wish he had stayed longer? The answer came to her later that night as she lay in bed, listening to the distant piano from the saloon and the occasional laughter from the street below. She was curious about him. Nathan Blackwood was like a character from a novel who didn't behave according to the established rules. Every interaction left her with more questions than answers. When Mrs. Blackwood mentioned at breakfast that she'd be sending supplies out to Nathan's ranch the following Sunday, Cassandra surprised herself by volunteering to help. It's the least I can do, after he helped me find lodging and employment. she explained hastily when the older woman raised an eyebrow. Hmm. Mrs. Blackwood's expression suggested she wasn't fooled by this explanation. Well, we'll leave after church then. Nathan usually doesn't come to town on Sundays, says the cattle don't observe the Sabbath, so neither can he. The Twin Pines Ranch was modest compared to some of the larger operations in the territory, but beautifully situated in a small valley with a creek running through it. The main house was a solid log structure with a wide porch and climbing roses along one side. Outbuildings stood in neat arrangement: barn, smokehouse, chicken coop, and bunkhouse, though Cassandra saw no sign of ranch hands. Nathan emerged from the barn as they approached, surprise evident on his face when he spotted Cassandra in the wagon beside his aunt. "Miss Morgan," he greeted, helping his aunt down first. "This is unexpected." "Miss Morgan kindly offered to help me with the supplies," Mrs. Blackwood explained, her tone suggesting more than her words. "And I thought it would be nice for her to see more of the countryside than just the town." Nathan offered his hand to help Cassandra down, his touch warm and steady. She was acutely aware of the strength in his fingers, the calluses that spoke of hard work, the careful way he released her the moment her feet touched the ground. "Well, you're both welcome," he said. "Though I'm afraid I don't offer much in the way of entertainment." "Nonsense," his aunt replied. "You can show Miss Morgan around while I get dinner started. I brought a roast." Before either could protest, she bustled into the house with remarkable speed for a woman of her years, leaving them standing awkwardly in the yard. "Your aunt is." Cassandra searched for a diplomatic word. "Determined," Nathan suggested with a wry smile. "Meddlesome?" "Subtle as a stampeding buffalo." The characterization was so accurate that Cassandra laughed outright, the sound surprising her. When had she last laughed freely? "I don't want to impose on your time, Mr. Blackwood," she said when her laughter subsided. "Nathan, please." He gestured toward the property. "And it's no imposition. I'd be happy to show you around, if you're interested." For the first time since arriving in Promise Creek, Cassandra made a decision based not on caution or necessity, but on genuine desire. "I'd like that." Nathan. His smile at her use of his name was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. The tour began with the barn, where Nathan showed her his small herd's prize bull, a massive creature with intelligent eyes that he approached without fear, stroking its broad forehead while explaining his breeding program. The chicken coop came next, where speckled hens clucked indignantly at their intrusion, and then the vegetable garden, where rows of corn grew alongside beans, squash, and tomatoes. "You manage all this yourself?" Cassandra asked, impressed by the operation's scope. "Mostly. I hire help during roundup and branding. Rest of the time, it's just me." He pointed toward the western ridge. "I'm hoping to expand next year, if the cattle prices hold." His passion for the land was evident in every word, every gesture. This wasn't just a business to him, it was a legacy, a future he was building piece by careful piece. "It's beautiful here," she said sincerely as they walked back toward the house. "Peaceful." Nathan nodded. "That's why I stayed, after my parents died. Could have sold up, moved to a city. But there's something about watching the sun rise over your own land that can't be matched." The simple sincerity of his words touched something in Cassandra. Here was a man who knew what he wanted, who worked for it honestly, who didn't seem to play the games of deception she'd come to expect from men. Dinner was a pleasant affair, with Mrs. Blackwood dominating the conversation with town gossip, while serving generous portions of roast beef, potatoes, and fresh vegetables from Nathan's garden. Throughout the meal, Cassandra found her gaze repeatedly drawn to Nathan, the careful way he listened to his aunt, the quiet confidence in his movements, the occasional glance he cast in Cassandra's direction when he thought she wouldn't notice. After the meal, they sat on the porch as the day's heat gave way to a pleasant evening coolness. Mrs. Blackwood, complaining of fatigue, retired to the guest room, leaving them alone in the gathering twilight. "Your aunt is not particularly subtle," Cassandra observed after the older woman had gone. Nathan chuckled, the sound deep and genuine. "Eleanor Blackwood has never seen the need for subtlety when directness will do. She's been trying to see me married off for years." The comment hung in the air between them, neither uncomfortable nor presumptuous, simply a fact stated without expectation. "And you haven't found anyone suitable?" Cassandra asked, surprising herself with her boldness. Nathan looked out across his land, now painted in purple shadows as the sun disappeared. It's not that simple out here. A ranch wife has to be strong, practical. Life isn't easy. He paused. And I've never been one to rush important decisions. The way he said it measured, thoughtful reinforced what Cassandra had observed about him. Nathan Blackwood wasn't a man who acted on impulse or fleeting desire. Whatever he did with purpose and consideration. Most men I've known have been less patient in their pursuits, she said carefully. Nathan's expression darkened slightly. Most men I've known don't deserve the women they pursue. He turned to look at her directly. I've seen how some men treat women, especially out here where the law is thin and social constraints thinner. It's not right. The conviction in his voice resonated with something deep inside her. For the first time in years, Cassandra felt the walls around her heart shift slightly, a hairline crack appearing in their solid construction. The moment passed as Nathan stood, offering to fetch coffee. When he returned with 2 steaming cups, their conversation turned to lighter topics: books they'd read, places they'd seen, the first snowfall expected in the coming months. It was the longest conversation Cassandra had had with a man where she didn't feel she needed to be on guard, watching for the moment his true intentions would be revealed. As they prepared to leave, the sun now fully set and stars appearing in the vast western sky, Nathan helped Cassandra into the wagon with the same careful respect he'd shown all day. "You're welcome back any time, Miss Morgan," he said, his voice low enough that his aunt, already seated and waiting, couldn't hear. The ranch is prettier in the fall, when the aspens change. It wasn't quite an invitation, not quite a declaration, just a door left carefully open, for her to step through or not, as she chose. "Thank you for your hospitality, Nathan," she replied, equally quiet. "I enjoyed seeing your home." The ride back to town was mostly silent, though Mrs. Blackwood cast knowing glances her way throughout the journey. Cassandra's mind whirled with conflicting thoughts. Nathan's consistent respect was dismantling her certainties about men and their motives, brick by careful brick. It was terrifying. It was exhilarating. "He's a good man," Mrs. Blackwood said finally, as the lights of Promise Creek came into view. "Better than most. Too stubborn for his own good sometimes. And Lord knows he works too hard, but a good man." Cassandra nodded, not trusting herself to speak. "Whatever's made you so cautious around men, my dear?" The older woman continued, surprising her with her perception. "I won't pry. But not all of them are the same. Some are worth taking a risk on." The days that followed were busy ones at the doctor's office. A fever swept through town, leaving Dr. Harris and Cassandra working long hours tending to the sick. Nathan came in once, not for himself, but bringing a young ranch hand who'd fallen ill. He stayed only long enough to ensure the boy was being cared for, exchanging just a few words with Cassandra before returning to his ranch. As autumn deepened, painting the surrounding mountains with gold and crimson, Cassandra found herself watching for Nathan's visits to town. Each brief encounter, a nod on the street, a few exchanged words at the general store, a shared hymnal at the occasional church service he attended added to the growing collection of evidence that perhaps, just perhaps, not all men were like those who had hurt her in the past. October brought the Harvest Festival, a community celebration with food, music, and dancing in the town square. Cassandra, now accepted as a permanent member of the community through her work with Dr. Harris, found herself helping with preparations, hanging paper lanterns, and arranging tables for the feast. "You'll save me a dance, won't you, Miss Morgan?" called Tom Wilson, the blacksmith's son, as he helped raise the musicians' platform. Before she could formulate a polite refusal, Nathan's voice came from behind her. "Miss Morgan might appreciate being asked rather than told, Wilson." The younger man flushed, mumbled an apology, and returned to his work. Cassandra turned to find Nathan securing a post for one of the banners, his sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms. "You didn't need to intervene," she said, though secretly she was pleased. "I can handle unwanted attention." Nathan secured the final knot before answering. "I don't doubt it, but sometimes it's nice not to have to." He brushed dust from his hands. "Will you be attending the festival?" "Mrs. Blackwood would accept no excuse," Cassandra replied with a small smile. "She's been quite insistent that I need to enjoy myself more, as she puts it." "My aunt has strong opinions on how others should live their lives," Nathan agreed dryly. Then, With a formality that might have seemed comical if not for the genuine uncertainty in his eyes, he continued, "If you were amenable, I would be honored if you would consider saving a dance for me. Only if you wish to, of course." The formal request, so carefully phrased to leave her complete freedom of choice, touched Cassandra deeply. "I would be happy to, Nathan." The smile that transformed his face made her heart skip a beat. For just a moment, he looked younger, unburdened by the responsibilities he carried. "I look forward to it," he said simply, touching his hat brim before returning to his work. Cassandra spent more time than she cared to admit preparing for the festival. She washed her best dress, a deep blue calico with modest lace trim, and spent precious coins on a new ribbon for her hair. Mrs. Blackwood, observing these preparations with poorly concealed satisfaction, offered the loan of a delicate silver brooch to complete the ensemble. The night of the festival arrived clear and cool, with a bright harvest moon illuminating the town square. Lanterns hung from wires stretched between buildings, casting a warm glow over the gathering. Tables groaned under the weight of autumn bounty roasted meats, pies of every description, fresh bread, and preserves. A small band of local musicians tuned their instruments on the platform as children darted between adults, playing tag in the festive atmosphere. Cassandra arrived with Mrs. Blackwood, immediately conscious of eyes turning in their direction. In the 6 months since arriving in Promise Creek, she had made a place for herself, earned respect through her competence and hard work. The wariness that had been her constant companion began to fade as neighbors greeted her warmly, including her in conversations about winter preparations and town improvements. She was helping Mrs. Peterson arrange her prize-winning apple pies when she felt a presence behind her. Turning, she found Nathan standing there, freshly shaved and wearing a clean shirt under his best vest. His dark hair was neatly combed, though one rebellious lock had already fallen across his forehead. "Miss Morgan," he greeted her, suddenly formal in the public setting. "You look lovely tonight." The simple compliment, delivered without expectation or hidden agenda, brought warmth to her cheeks. "Thank you, Mr. Blackwood. You clean up quite nicely yourself." His smile at her teasing was worth the momentary boldness. Before he could respond, the band struck up a lively tune, and couples began moving toward the cleared area that served as a dance floor. "Would this be a good time to claim that dance?" Nathan asked, offering his hand. Cassandra hesitated only briefly before placing her fingers in his. "I should warn you, it's been some time since I've danced." "That makes 2 of us," he admitted as he led her to the floor. "We can be rusty together." Despite his disclaimer, Nathan proved to be a capable dancer, guiding her through the steps with the same quiet confidence he showed in everything. His hand at her waist was respectful, his grip firm but gentle as they moved through the patterns of the dance. "You've been settling in well," he observed as they circled each other. "Dr. Harris says you've transformed his practice." "He exaggerates," Cassandra demurred, though she was pleased by the praise. "But I do enjoy the work. It suits you." Helping people. The music brought them close together, then apart again. "You have a gift for making people feel at ease." "Do I?" The observation surprised her. "I've always thought myself rather reserved. Careful, maybe, but kind underneath." His eyes held hers as the dance brought them together again. "You listen more than you speak. Notice things others miss." The perceptiveness of his comment startled her. Few people had ever taken the time to see past her guarded exterior. "You're observant yourself. Comes with ranching. You learn to notice details change in weather, animal behavior, the little things that could mean trouble or opportunity." His hand tightened slightly on hers as he guided her through a turn. "And some people are worth paying attention to." The music ended before she could formulate a response to the subtle compliment. Nathan released her reluctantly, stepping back to a proper distance as applause sounded for the musicians. "Thank you for the dance, Miss Morgan," he said formally, though his eyes conveyed more than his words. "Perhaps another later?" She found herself suggesting, surprising them both. His smile was answer enough. The evening progressed in a pleasant blur of conversation, food, and laughter. Cassandra danced with Dr. Harris and several other respectable men of the town, but found herself watching for Nathan between partners. He moved through the crowd with easy confidence, speaking with ranchers about cattle prices, helping elderly Mrs. Whitman to a seat, entertaining children with a simple coin trick. As promised, He claimed her for another dance, a slower waltz this time, which brought them into closer proximity. The warmth of his hand at her waist, the clean scent of soap and leather that clung to him, the way his eyes never left her face, all combined to create a sense of intimacy that both frightened and thrilled her. "I've been meaning to ask," Nathan said as they moved in slow circles. "What brought you to Promise Creek? It's not exactly on the main routes west." The question was reasonable, but touched on parts of her past Cassandra rarely discussed. Yet something about Nathan made her want to share more than she usually did. "I was looking for a fresh start," she said carefully. "Somewhere I could build something for myself, on my own terms." Nathan nodded, seeming to understand the unspoken parts of her answer. Running from something, or towards something? Both, perhaps. The music swelled around them, cocooning their conversation from the surrounding festivities. "My experiences with men haven't been positive. I learned young that most see women as conveniences, not people." A shadow crossed Nathan's face. "I'm sorry that's been your experience." "It's not right. But it's common," she countered. "Especially for women without family protection or financial security. That doesn't make it acceptable." His voice carried an edge of anger, not directed at her, but at the injustices she'd referenced. "A man worthy of the name respects others, protects those who need protection, and never takes what isn't freely given." The conviction in his words resonated within her. This, she realized, was the core of what made Nathan Blackwood different from other men. She'd known his fundamental belief in treating others with dignity, regardless of their status or gender. "You're unusual, Nathan Blackwood," she said softly as the music began to fade. His expression softened. "Not unusual, just raised right. My father believed character was a man's true measure, not wealth or power. He'd have been ashamed to call any man who mistreated women a friend." As the dance ended, they stood for a moment longer than necessary, connected by more than just clasped hands. Something was building between them, a tentative bridge across the gulf of Cassandra's mistrust and Nathan's patient restraint. The moment was broken by a commotion near the refreshment tables. Raised voices drew their attention, and Nathan frowned as he recognized the source. "Jackson and his crowd," he muttered, already deep in their cups by the look of it. The saloon owner and several of his regular patrons had apparently brought their own whiskey to supplement the cider served at the festival. Their loud laughter and crude comments were already disturbing nearby families. "I should help settle this," Nathan said, apologetic. "Sheriff Taylor's away until tomorrow." Cassandra nodded, releasing his hand. "Of course." She watched as Nathan approached the group, his manner firm but non-confrontational as he suggested they take their celebration back to the saloon. Jackson, a burly man with a perpetual sneer, seemed ready to argue until Nathan said something too low for Cassandra to hear, which caused the saloon owner to glance toward the families nearby and reluctantly nod. Crisis averted, the festival continued. Though Nathan was pulled into various conversations for the remainder of the evening, his eyes frequently sought Cassandra across the square. Each time their gazes met, she felt that same flutter in her chest, unfamiliar but not unwelcome. As the celebration wound down and families began heading home, Cassandra found herself helping to clean up, gathering empty plates and folding tablecloths alongside other women of the town. Nathan appeared at her side, offering to walk her and his aunt home. "A perfect gentleman," Mrs. Blackwood commented with poorly disguised approval as they made their way through the quiet streets. "Just like your father, God rest his soul." At the boarding house door, Mrs. Blackwood made a show of struggling with the lock, then announced she'd left something at the festival grounds and needed to return immediately, despite Nathan's offers to retrieve it for her. "Nonsense," she declared. "You stay and keep Miss Morgan company on the porch for a few minutes. I won't be long." As she bustled away with remarkable speed for a woman of her years, Nathan shook his head ruefully. "Subtle as a charging bull, as I said." Cassandra laughed softly. "She means well." "She does." Nathan remained at the foot of the porch steps, maintaining a respectful distance even in his aunt's absence. "I hope you enjoyed the evening." "Very much. Thank you for the dances." Cassandra hesitated, then added, "And for the conversation. It's been a long time since I felt comfortable talking to a man." Something flickered in Nathan's eye, satisfaction, perhaps, or hope. "I'm glad. Your comfort is important to me." The simple statement, delivered without artifice or expectation, loosened another brick in the wall around Cassandra's heart. Here was a man who genuinely cared about her feelings, who consistently showed respect not just in words, but in actions. "Nathan," she began, uncertain how to express the conflicting emotions swirling within her. "I'm not good at this. Trusting. Opening up. My experiences have taught me caution." "You don't owe me an explanation," he said gently. "Everyone has their reasons for being as they are. All I ask is that you judge me by my actions, not by what others have done." The wisdom in his request struck her deeply. Wasn't that what she had wanted for herself when she came to Promise Creek, to be judged on her own merits, not on assumptions or prejudices? "That seems fair," she acknowledged. Then, gathering her courage, she added, "I would like to visit your ranch again sometime. When the aspens change color, as you mentioned." The smile that spread across Nathan's face was like sunrise breaking over the mountains, gradual, then suddenly brilliant. "I'd like that very much." Mrs. Blackwood returned suspiciously empty-handed, but beaming with satisfaction at finding them in conversation. As they said their goodnights, Nathan touched his hat brim to Cassandra, his eyes conveying more than words could express. That night, lying in her narrow bed, Cassandra replayed the evening in her mind, the careful pressure of Nathan's hand at her waist, the warmth in his eyes when he looked at her, the way he listened as if her words truly mattered. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to consider the possibility that not all men were alike, that perhaps there were some worth trusting with more than just polite conversation. The thought was terrifying. It was also exhilarating. The following Sunday, Cassandra accompanied Mrs. Blackwood to the Twin Pines Ranch again, this time with her invitation explicitly extended by Nathan himself. The day was perfect, crisp autumn air, cloudless blue sky, and the aspen groves on the surrounding hillsides transformed into shimmering gold. Nathan met them in the yard, clearly having watched for their arrival. He helped both women down from the wagon, his hand lingering a moment longer in Cassandra's. "I thought we might ride out to see the aspens up close," he suggested. "If you're comfortable on horseback, Miss Morgan." "It's been some time," she admitted, "but I grew up riding." While Mrs. Blackwood happily settled herself in the kitchen to prepare lunch, Nathan saddled 2 horses, his own chestnut gelding and a gentle mare with a white blaze. He helped Cassandra mount, his hands strong and steady at her waist, then swung up onto his own horse with practiced ease. They rode at a leisurely pace across the ranch, Nathan pointing out features of his operation: the creek that provided water year-round, the southern pastures where he wintered his cattle, the stand of pines that gave the ranch its name. Throughout, he spoke with quiet pride, not of what he had, but of what he was building for the future. "My father started with nothing," he explained as they approached the aspen grove. "Built everything through hard work and fair dealing. I want to honor that legacy, make something that would make him proud." "I think he would be," Cassandra said sincerely. "What you've accomplished here is impressive." Nathan shook his head. "It's a good start, but I have bigger plans." He gestured toward the eastern ridge. "That land connects to a high valley, perfect summer pasture. Owners willing to sell next spring if I can raise the capital." His ambition wasn't for wealth or status, she realized, but for creating something lasting, something meaningful. It was refreshingly different from the get-rich-quick schemes that drove so many men west. They reached the aspen grove and dismounted. Nathan secured the horses before offering his arm to Cassandra, leading her into the heart of the golden forest. Sunlight filtered through the trembling leaves, casting dappled patterns on the ground and illuminating the white bark of the trees. "It's beautiful," Cassandra breathed, turning slowly to take in the scene. "Like walking through liquid gold." Nathan watched her, his expression soft. "This is my favorite place on the ranch. Especially now, when the leaves turn." They walked deeper into the grove, the only sounds the gentle rustle of leaves and the occasional call of a bird. Cassandra found herself relaxing in the peaceful setting, her usual wariness melting away in Nathan's presence. "May I ask you something personal?" Nathan said after they had walked in companionable silence for several minutes. Cassandra tensed slightly, but nodded. "You may ask. I might not answer." "Fair enough." Nathan seemed to choose his words carefully. "You mentioned that your experiences with men haven't been positive. I won't ask for details, but is that why you came west? To escape someone?" The question probed at old wounds, but Cassandra found she wanted to answer, wanted Nathan to understand what had shaped her caution. Not one someone, many someones. She kept her eyes on the path ahead as she spoke. My father gambled away our farm after my mother died. My uncle who took me in had inappropriate expectations. After I left his home, I discovered quickly that a young woman alone is seen as easy prey by many men. Nathan's expression darkened. I'm sorry that happened to you. I learned to protect myself, she continued. To be suspicious, to keep my distance. It was the only way to survive. She glanced at him then. Until I came here, I believed all men ultimately wanted the same thing, to use women for their own purposes, whether for physical gratification or domestic servitude. And now? Nathan asked quietly. Cassandra stopped walking, turning to face him fully. Now I'm reconsidering that belief, at least in one case. The hope that flared in Nathan's eyes made her heart beat faster. He took a step closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of gray in his blue eyes, but still maintaining a respectful distance. Cassandra, he said, the first time he'd used her given name. I want to be clear about something. I enjoy your company. I admire your strength, your intelligence, your determination. I would very much like to continue getting to know you better. He paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. But I will never pressure you, never rush you, never make you feel that you owe me anything for my friendship or regard. The declaration, so straightforward and sincere, touched something deep within her. Here was a man offering exactly what she needed most: patience, respect, and the freedom to choose her own path. Thank you, she said simply, the words inadequate for the emotions swelling in her chest. Nathan smiled, a tender expression that transformed his weathered face. No need for thanks. That's just how it should be. They continued their walk through the aspen grove. The atmosphere between them shifted subtly, more relaxed, more open. Nathan told stories of growing up on the ranch, of learning to ride almost before he could walk, of his mother teaching him to read by lamplight after long days of work. Cassandra shared bits of her own childhood, the happier times before her father's decline, the books she'd loved, the dreams she'd harbored of adventure and independence. As they headed back toward the horses, Nathan stopped suddenly, pointing to a distant ridge where a magnificent buck stood silhouetted against the sky. 10-pointer, he whispered. Been trying to get a clean shot at him for 2 seasons. He's beautiful, Cassandra murmured, admiring the animal's proud stance. That he is. Nathan watched the deer for a moment longer before adding, some things are worth the wait. The double meaning wasn't lost on Cassandra. As they rode back to the ranch house, she found herself contemplating the man beside her, his patience, his integrity, his gentle strength. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine a future that included trusting someone else, opening her heart to the possibility of more than just independence and survival. The weeks that followed saw a gradual deepening of their connection. Nathan began coming to town more frequently, often with transparent excuses about supplies or business that needed attention. Each visit included time spent with Cassandra, walks after church, conversations on Mrs. Blackwood's porch, occasional shared meals at the town's small cafe. Always, he maintained his respectful distance, never presuming, never pushing, yet making his interest clear through 100 small attentions. He brought her books he thought she might enjoy, listened intently when she spoke, remembered details she mentioned in passing. When the first snow fell in early December, she opened her door to find a pair of warm wool mittens hanging on the knob, handmade by Nathan himself. Mrs. Blackwood informed her with poorly concealed delight. For Cassandra, each interaction was both terrifying and wonderful. The walls she had built so carefully were crumbling despite her best efforts to maintain them. Nathan's consistent respect and patience were proving more effective at breaching her defenses than any amount of charm or persuasion could have been. As Christmas approached, Promise Creek transformed with festive decorations and preparations for holiday celebrations. The town planned a Christmas Eve gathering at the church, followed by a community dinner. Dr. Harris, insisting that Cassandra had earned a holiday, gave her the week between Christmas and New Year's as paid leave. You've revolutionized my practice, he told her warmly. Least I can do is give you some time to enjoy the season. The night before Christmas Eve, Nathan called at the boarding house, stamping snow from his boots and removing his hat, as Mrs. Blackwood ushered him into the parlor where Cassandra sat mending. "Nephew, what a surprise!" the older woman exclaimed with such obvious insincerity that Cassandra had to hide a smile. "Aunt Eleanor," Nathan greeted her, then turned to Cassandra with a warmer smile. "Miss Morgan, I hope I'm not interrupting." "Not at all," Cassandra assured him, setting aside her sewing. "I was just finishing." Mrs. Blackwood made a great show of remembering urgent business in the kitchen, leaving them alone with the parlor door conspicuously ajar. Propriety observed, but privacy granted. "I have something to ask you," Nathan said once his aunt had gone, settling into the chair opposite Cassandra's. "A Christmas request, of sorts." Cassandra raised an eyebrow, curious. "Oh, I'd be honored if you would attend the Christmas Eve service and dinner with me tomorrow." He spoke formally, almost as if practicing a speech. "And I was hoping you might consider spending part of your holiday at Twin Pines. Aunt Eleanor will be there, of course, and we're expecting snow, so you might need to stay a few days, but I thought—" "Nathan," Cassandra interrupted his uncharacteristic rambling. "Are you inviting me to spend Christmas at your ranch?" He ran a hand through his hair, suddenly boyish in his nervousness. "Yes, if you'd like to. No pressure, of course." The invitation touched her deeply. Christmas had been a lonely time for her in recent years, spent in boarding houses or working extra shifts to avoid the emptiness of celebration without family. "I would love to," she said simply. The smile that spread across Nathan's face was worth any lingering uncertainty she might have felt. "Really? That's wonderful." They sat in companionable silence for a moment, the crackling fire and ticking clock the only sounds in the cozy room. Nathan seemed to be gathering his thoughts, his expression growing more serious. "Cassandra," he began, using her first name deliberately, "there's something else I'd like to discuss with you." Her heart quickened at his tone. "Yes. These past months, getting to know you, have been the happiest I can remember in a long time." His gaze held her steadily. "I've come to care for you deeply, more than I thought possible." Cassandra's breath caught in her throat. Though his interest had been increasingly clear through his actions, hearing it stated so plainly was different, thrilling and frightening in equal measure. "I know you've had reasons to be cautious," Nathan continued, "to protect yourself from men and their intentions. I respect that. I respect you." He leaned forward slightly, his expression earnest. "I'm not asking for any declarations or promises. All I'm asking is if you might be open to the possibility of more between us. In time. At your pace." The careful way he phrased it, offering possibility without pressure, expressing his feelings without demanding reciprocation, was so typically Nathan that Cassandra felt a rush of affection for him. "I'm scared," she admitted, the honesty surprising even herself. "Not of you, but of feeling this way, trusting someone else with my heart." Nathan nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Fear's natural when something matters. Doesn't mean you shouldn't try." "Is that what you're asking? For me to try?" "Yes." The single word carried the weight of all his hopes. "Not to promise anything. Just to be open to what might develop between us, naturally, over time." Cassandra considered his words carefully. The walls around her heart had protected her for years, kept her safe from the pain of betrayal and disappointment. But they had also kept her isolated, unable to experience the deeper connections that gave life its richest meaning. And if anyone had earned the right to ask her to lower those walls, it was Nathan Blackwood, with his endless patience, his unwavering respect, his willingness to offer without demanding in return. "I think," she said slowly, "I would like to try." The joy that illuminated Nathan's face made her own heart lighter. He reached across the space between them, palm up in invitation. After only a moment's hesitation, she placed her hand in his, feeling the warmth and strength of his fingers as they closed gently around hers. "Thank you," he said simply, the words carrying far more meaning than their brevity suggested. They sat that way for several minutes, hands clasped, sharing a connection that went beyond words. When Mrs. Blackwood eventually returned, making far more noise than necessary to announce her presence, they separated reluctantly. Christmas Eve dawned clear and cold, the morning sun glinting off fresh snow that had fallen overnight. Nathan arrived at the boarding house in a sleigh, the horses adorned with bells that jingled merrily as they trotted through town toward the church. The small wooden building was transformed for the occasion, evergreen boughs decorating the walls and candles glowing in every window. As they entered together, Cassandra was acutely aware of the glances and smiles directed their way. In the close-knit community of Promise Creek, their developing relationship had not gone unnoticed. The service was simple but moving, with familiar carols and readings from Scripture. Throughout, Cassandra was conscious of Nathan beside her, his deep voice joining the hymns, his solid presence a comfort in the crowded church. Afterward, the community gathered in the town hall for the Christmas dinner. Long tables groaned under the weight of roasted turkeys, hams, pies, and all manner of festive foods contributed by families throughout the area. Children darted between adults, excited by the holiday and the promise of gifts the next morning. "Merry Christmas, Miss Morgan," Dr. Harris greeted her warmly as they found seats at one of the tables. "You're looking particularly radiant this evening." Cassandra smiled, knowing her happiness must be visible. "Merry Christmas, Doctor. Are you joining us at the table?" "Wouldn't miss it." The elderly physician settled beside Mrs. Blackwood, immediately engaging her in conversation about his rheumatism and her recommended remedies. Throughout the meal, Cassandra found herself repeatedly catching Nathan's eye across the table, sharing silent moments of connection amid the festive chaos. When his knee occasionally brushed against hers beneath the tablecloth, she didn't pull away. As the evening wound down and families began heading home for the night, Nathan helped Cassandra and his aunt into the sleigh for the journey to Twin Pines. The night was magical, stars brilliant in the clear sky, snow glittering in the moonlight. The only sounds the jingling of harness bells and the soft thud of horse hooves on the packed snow. The ranch house glowed with welcome as they approached, lamps lit in the windows and smoke curling from the chimney. Nathan had prepared for their arrival. Cassandra realized the main room was warm from a blazing fire. Evergreen boughs decorated the mantel, and a small tree stood in one corner, adorned with simple ornaments and candles. "It's beautiful," she said sincerely as she took in the scene. Nathan looked pleased by her approval. "Not fancy, but festive enough, I hope." "Perfectly festive," Mrs. Blackwood declared, bustling toward the kitchen. "Now, who wants hot cider before bed?" The evening passed in comfortable conversation by the fire, sharing Christmas memories and traditions. When they finally retired Mrs. Blackwood to the guest room, Cassandra to Nathan's room, he insisted on taking the bunkhouse despite the cold, and Nathan to the barn after ensuring everything was secure. Cassandra found herself lying awake, surrounded by Nathan's things, breathing in the scent of him on the pillows. It should have made her uncomfortable, this intimate glimpse into his private space. Instead, she felt safe, protected, at peace in a way she hadn't experienced in years. Christmas morning brought more snow and the exchange of simple gifts. Mrs. Blackwood had knitted Cassandra a beautiful blue shawl. Nathan's gift, presented with uncharacteristic nervousness, was a small wooden box he had carved himself, decorated with intricate aspen leaves and lined with soft fabric. "For your hairpins and such," he explained as she ran her fingers over the detailed craftsmanship. "Noticed you keep them in a jar by your bed at Aunt Eleanor's." The thoughtfulness of the gift that he had observed such a small detail and created something specifically to address it moved her deeply. Her own gift to him seemed inadequate in comparison. A book on cattle breeding she'd ordered from Denver and a hand-knitted scarf. "It's perfect," Nathan assured her, immediately wrapping the scarf around his neck despite the warmth of the house. "Exactly what I needed." The day passed in pleasant domesticity, cooking together, sharing stories, venturing out briefly to feed the livestock before returning to the warmth of the house. As evening approached, Mrs. Blackwood announced her intention to retire early, citing age and overindulgence in Christmas pudding. "Don't stay up too late, you two," she advised with a meaningful look that made Cassandra blush and Nathan clear his throat. Alone by the fire, they sat in comfortable silence for a time, watching the flames dance and listening to the occasional pop of the burning logs. Outside, snow had begun falling again, soft flakes drifting past the windows and adding to the sense of being cocooned in their own private world. "Thank you for coming," Nathan said finally, his voice low. "Having you here, it makes the house feel like a home." The simple statement, delivered without artifice or expectation, touched Cassandra deeply. "Thank you for inviting me. It's been the nicest Christmas I can remember in years. Nathan turned toward her, his expression serious. I want you to know something, Cassandra. When I said I care for you, that wasn't just words. He paused, seeming to search for the right way to express himself. I've never felt this way about anyone before, and I'm willing to wait, to move as slowly as you need, to prove myself worthy of your trust. The raw honesty in his voice made her throat tighten with emotion. This man, this good and patient man, was offering her everything she'd convinced herself she could never have: love without conditions, partnership without subjugation, strength without dominance. Nathan, she began, then found words inadequate. Instead, she moved closer on the sofa, reaching for his hand and interlacing their fingers. I'm not afraid anymore. Not with you. The hope that kindled in his eyes made her heart race. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he raised his free hand to her face, fingers trembling slightly as they traced the curve of her cheek. May I? He whispered, gaze dropping to her lips. In answer, Cassandra leaned forward, closing the distance between them. The kiss was gentle, tentative, a question rather than a demand. His lips were warm against hers, slightly chapped from the winter air, and tasting faintly of cinnamon from the Christmas cider. When they parted, Nathan's eyes remained closed for a moment, as if savoring the sensation. When he opened them, the emotion there made Cassandra's breath catch. I love you, he said simply. I don't expect you to say it back, but I needed you to know. The words, spoken without demand or expectation, unlocked something in Cassandra's heart. The final bricks of her defensive wall crumbled, leaving her vulnerable but strangely unafraid. I think I might love you too, she whispered. I'm just learning what that means again. Nathan smiled, the expression transforming his face. We'll learn together. The blizzard that had begun Christmas night continued for 3 days, effectively stranding them at Twin Pines. Mrs. Blackwood pronounced herself completely unsurprised by this turn of events, though she maintained a chaperone's vigilance despite her obvious approval of their developing relationship. Those snow-bound days became precious to Cassandra, cooking meals together in the warm kitchen, reading by the fire while Nathan worked on small repairs around the house, learning to play checkers. Nathan was patient but competitive, and sharing stories of their pasts. Each revelation, each shared moment, strengthened the bond growing between them. On the 4th day, the storm cleared, leaving a transformed landscape of pristine white broken only by the paths Nathan had shoveled to the barn and outbuildings. Though the road to town was now passable, Cassandra found herself reluctant to leave the cocoon of warmth and happiness they had created. You could stay longer, Nathan suggested as he helped her into her coat. The doctor gave you the week, after all. The temptation was strong, but Cassandra knew she needed time to process everything that had happened between them. I should get back. People will talk if I'm gone too long. Let them talk, Nathan said, but without pressure. Whatever you decide is fine. That simple acceptance, his consistent willingness to let her choose without manipulation or expectation, reinforced her growing certainty that Nathan Blackwood was unlike any man she had known before. The journey back to Promise Creek was beautiful, the sleigh gliding smoothly over the packed snow, the world around them glistening in the winter sunlight. Nathan kept the horses at an unhurried pace, clearly in no rush to end their time together. As they approached town, he reached for her hand. When can I see you again? I'll be at church on Sunday, she replied, squeezing his fingers. And perhaps you could call on me before then? Tomorrow evening? The smile that lit his face was answer enough. The remaining winter months passed in a deepening relationship that became the talk of Promise Creek. Nathan called regularly at the boarding house, took Cassandra on sleigh rides when weather permitted, and escorted her to the occasional town social. Always, he maintained his respectful approach, never presuming, never pushing beyond what she was comfortable with. With each interaction, each conversation, each shared experience, Cassandra's trust in him grew stronger. The walls she had built to protect herself became unnecessary in the face of Nathan's consistent integrity and patience. By the time spring brought the first wildflowers to the hills around Promise Creek, Cassandra found herself contemplating a future she had never dared imagine. A future with someone to share her joys and sorrows, someone who saw her strength as an asset rather than a threat, someone who offered protection without demanding submission in return. On a mild April evening, Nathan invited her to ride out to Twin Pines after work. "There's something I want to show you," he said, eyes alight with barely contained excitement. The ranch was transformed by spring new grass covering the pastures, calves frolicking alongside their mothers, fruit trees in the small orchard covered with delicate blossoms. Nathan led her past the main house, toward the eastern ridge, where construction materials were stacked neatly beside freshly turned earth. "What is this?" Cassandra asked, curious. Nathan's expression was a mix of nervousness and hope. "It's a house, or it will be." He pulled a folded paper from his pocket, spreading it to reveal detailed plans. 3 bedrooms, a study for your books, big kitchen with windows that catch the morning light, porch wrapped around 3 sides so you can follow the sun all day. "Nathan," Cassandra's voice faltered as she realized the implications. He took her hands in his, meeting her eyes directly. "I'm not asking yet. Not officially. That's not what this is." His thumbs traced gentle circles on her palms. "This is me showing you that I'm serious about building a future. That when if you're ready, I'll be ready too." The careful way he phrased it, making clear that this was information, not pressure, made Cassandra's heart swell with emotion. Even now, months into their relationship, Nathan continued to prioritize her comfort, her choices, her pace. "It's beautiful," she said, looking at the plans again. "The design is perfect. You can change anything you don't like," he assured her quickly. "It's just a starting point." Cassandra smiled, touching his face gently. "I wouldn't change a thing." The hope that flared in his eyes made her lean forward to kiss him, still a rare enough occurrence that Nathan seemed momentarily surprised before responding with careful tenderness. When they parted, Cassandra kept her hand on his cheek, needing him to understand what she was about to say. "Nathan, when I came to Promise Creek, I believed all men only wanted to use women. I'd never met a man who offered respect without demanding submission in return." Nathan covered her hand with his own, turning to press a kiss to her palm. "You deserved better than what you'd been shown. And you showed me what better looked like," she continued. "You offered me your name, your reputation vouching for mine when I was a stranger. You offered me your patience when I was wary and defensive. You never pushed, never presumed, never made me feel I owed you anything for your kindness." "That's not kindness," Nathan corrected gently. "That's basic decency." "Maybe it should be," Cassandra agreed. "But it was revolutionary to me." She took a deep breath, gathering her courage. "I love you, Nathan Blackwood. I'm not afraid to say it anymore." The joy that transformed his face was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. "I love you too, Cassandra Morgan. More than I have words to express." They stood together as the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the land that would become their home, not just Nathan's dream anymore, but a shared vision of their future together. Summer brought the realization of that vision. On a perfect June morning, with wildflowers carpeting the hills and birds singing in the cottonwoods along the creek, Cassandra Morgan became Cassandra Blackwood in a simple ceremony at Twin Pines Ranch. The entire town turned out for the celebration, setting up tables beneath the twin pines that gave the ranch its name. Dr. Harris, who gave the bride away, declared it the happiest day since his own wedding 50 years earlier. Mrs. Blackwood alternated between tears of joy and practical management of the festivities, proudly showing off the wedding cake she had labored over for days. As the sun began its descent toward the western mountains, Nathan led his bride in their first dance as husband and wife, his eyes never leaving hers as they moved to the music of a fiddle and guitar. "Happy?" he asked softly, holding her close enough to speak privately despite the crowd around them. Cassandra smiled up at the man who had taught her to trust again, who had offered his name and his patience when she needed both most desperately. "Happier than I ever believed possible." Nathan's arms tightened around her waist. "This is just the beginning, Mrs. Blackwood. We have a lifetime ahead of us." "A lifetime," she repeated, savoring the words and all they promised. "I can't think of anyone I'd rather spend it with." As twilight deepened into night and lanterns were lit around the celebration, Cassandra found a quiet moment to reflect on the journey that had brought her here. From a frightened, defensive woman convinced that all men only wanted to use her, to a bride secure in the knowledge that true partnership based on mutual respect, patience, and love was possible. All because one good man had offered her exactly what she needed most: his name and his patience, asking nothing in return until she was ready to give her heart freely. That night, as stars appeared in the vast western sky above their new home, Cassandra and Nathan Blackwood began the first chapter of their life together, a life built on the foundation of patience, respect, and a love that had grown slowly but unshakably strong. 10 years later, the Twin Pines Ranch had nearly doubled in size. The house Nathan had planned stood complete, surrounded by gardens Cassandra had lovingly cultivated. 3 children, 2 boys and a girl, brought laughter and activity to what had once been a solitary bachelor's existence. On their 10th anniversary, as they sat on the porch watching their children chase fireflies in the summer twilight, Nathan reached for Cassandra's hand. "Any regrets?" he asked, a question he posed every year on this date. And as she had 9 times before, Cassandra squeezed his fingers and replied with absolute certainty, "Not a single one." The patient cowboy and the woman who had learned to trust again had built exactly the life they had once only dared to dream about: a life of partnership, respect, and enduring love.